Hello everyone, I'm Feline Entity, and let's talk about probably the best way of creating VSF avatars called Proxy Bones. So, what are Proxy Bones and why would you want them? Well, Proxy Bones are basically a copy of your skeleton that we're going to use to basically couple or decouple our avatar to the actual VRM control, tracking, whatever. And to make that, let's actually check out my current character here. It's a fully rigged model. I already textured, did all the things. It's basically ready for export. Now, usually we'll just select everything and we're going to export it, FBX, into my avatar stuff. Only the selected objects. We don't bake any animations. I want the leaf bones because I want physics. And we don't apply any modifiers because I don't want to lose our blend shapes. All right, so we export that. Now we could already go over to Unity and do all the things, but then we couldn't use Proxy Bones. So to get our Proxy Bones, the easiest way would be to simply select our already existing skeleton and just duplicate it and then export this duplicate, which would be totally fine, but I like it a little bit more clean. So what I'm going to do is first I want this to be a little bit more obvious. So these are like the regular bones. What I'm going to do is go into edit mode and I'm going to select all the humanoid bones of the original skeleton. So that's the legs, the feet, the spine, the neck, the head, the shoulders, the arms, the fingers. Hope I have everything here. And the other arm, of course. And yeah, anything your character actually has on humanoid points. Like the tail obviously doesn't belong to that. The hair doesn't. If you use eye bones, I'm not going to select them here, but if you use eye bones, you can select those. If you have a jaw bone for some reason. And I'm just going to duplicate those with Shift D, so I get like a duplicate. I'm going to right click. And oh, I see I actually missed one there, I think. Yeah, so Control Z. So this should be all I need. Okay, again, Shift D, right click, and then I'm going to press P to separate those bones out. And then I go back into object mode. I'm going to hide everything but the thing I just extracted. Let's do like a little double check. I think I have everything I wanted. So I could export this, but I like to name this properly. So I go back into edit mode, select all the bones, and I'm going to use F3 and search for batch rename. I want all the bones. I would like to, I think it's set name. Yeah, I'm going to set a prefix. I'm going to call this proxy underscore, which adds the proxy underscore prefix to every single bone name. All right. Now, because we copied these bones, they actually have a .001 behind every single bone. So I'm just going to do the same thing. F3, batch rename. This is already set, but this time I want to strip characters. I'm going to select digits and punctuation with Shift. At the end, OK. And now if I just check out the the bone names, it's proxy and then the name of the bone, wherever it is. Cool, perfect. All right, now I'm gonna actually rename the armature itself. So this will be the proxy underscore armature. And then we're gonna export that. So FBX again, and this time I actually do not want leaf bones because we won't be using physics on that one. And yeah, the same as everything else. I'm going to rename this to feline low poly underscore proxy. Okay. Right. let's go over to Unity, which will probably import the stuff I just exported here. There we go. We have both our things. The one without a preview is our proxy. Now we're going to set up our proxy object over here as a regular, like we would a regular VRM object. So first, under model, we I make sure that convert units is off. That usually seems to be working better for me when it comes to scale. Then under rig, I'm going to set the animation type to humanoid and apply that. Now sometimes the configure button doesn't really want to show up for some reason. So usually I can fix that by just deselecting it and then selecting it again, and then the configure button just pops up. We can save this. This is fine. Now, this is our skeleton that we just had in Blender as well. Now I know I have a chest bone, so let me just fix that with our proxy chest over here. So I got that, and I'll check all the other things. That seems to be correct. All the bones are correctly set up. Under head, I have the neck and the head, which is correct. I don't have eyes or jaw. And the same for the fingers. Everything seems to be all right over here. So I'm going to apply this, and then I'm done. Now your FBX, your regular actual avatar model, the same thing here. Make sure it has the same scale. And if you use convert units like me or turn it off, this also needs to be the same. So these two things need to be the same scale. And then under rig, you can keep it as generic. But for the way I'm going to set up and link those two skeletons in a moment, I'm going to set this as humanoid as well. So I'm going to apply this, deselect and select because it's Unity. Configure, we're missing the chest bone here again. So I'm going to look for that. There's our chest bone. All right. Same for head here. The neck is actually missing. So I'm going to add the neck. And I don't have any eyes here. You basically just want the same bone set as your proxy object as well. Fingers are already fine. Gonna apply this. I'm done. Cool. Everything is set up. Nice. So let me just drag our actual avatar into the scene. There we go. It's a bit big because as Unity does, it for some reason multiplies the scale by 100. Nothing under the root. I don't know why it does that, so I'm gonna reset that back to 1. There we are. That seems fine. Cool. And then we're going to drag in our proxy object as well. And this is also scaled by 100 for some reason, so let's bring that back to 1. Cool. Now, to check if we actually did it correctly, we're just gonna go into the armature of our actual mesh, click on hip, that gives you the position of the hip, and then we click on proxy hip, and it is the same position. And we can double check with the spine maybe, spine. If you check the spine here, it's the same position. There we go. So, we now have a ghostly skeleton and our actual avatar. What we're going to do now is select our proxy skeleton. I'm going to hide this just so we don't get confused here. So our invisible proxy skeleton, we're going to export this as a VRM. If you try that right now, if you try to export to VRM, it will complain that there is no active mesh. So what we need to do is actually give it a mesh. To do that, all we have to do is just right click it, 3D object, and then a cube. That gives us a cute little cube, and that is already enough to fulfill that active mesh thing. So we select our root again, go to VRM, export to VRM, just give it a title, a version, and an author. That's all it needs. I'm going to export this to a VRM folder I already set up. Avatar, VRM, there we go. Save. All right, and exported this as VRM. I can delete this now. Let's delete this. And then I go into our VRM. Here's our little cube. Bring that in. So we have our VRM prefab now. What I usually do, if you try to delete the cube because we don't need it anymore, it will say, oh, you have to open the prefab and change everything. And I don't really like going into the whole prefab editor. So what I'm just going to do is select the root, right click and click unpack prefab. That basically cuts the link to the actual prefab. And then I just delete the cube. And then I'm going to unhide our little proxy here again and just drag it into our actual proxy. I don't know why I call it proxy, the actual mesh, of course. The mesh, our actual avatar with its own skeleton and everything. Now this is a little bit ugly, so I'm just gonna throw in some materials real quick. And there we go. Now we actually have something nice to look at. So, what are we doing now? We have an avatar in our VRM, but it's not gonna move with anything. So to actually make it move, to make this armature in our actual avatar to move with the VRM armature over here, what we need to do is we start at hip, we add a component, and we transfer to our rotation constraint. We add an element to the sources, and then we give it the proxy hip. Now, if we click activate now, every time the proxy hip changes its rotation, the entire mesh of the actual visible skeleton basically will follow with it. Now we can't rotate the actual hip anymore because it is constrained to the rotation of our proxy hip. Now, the thing is, we have to do this now for every single bone, humanoid bone, of our armature, which can be quite daunting and error prone since we're doing this for over 30 bones. And we have to go through every single bone. It can be quite annoying. So what we're gonna do instead is, if you remember, I actually set up in our import here, I actually set up this as a humanoid, even though we technically don't have to. And the reason for that is I asked my good friend MinionsArt to help me write a little script that helps us set up all the rotation constraints in one go. So all we need to do is down in the description, I'm going to put a link to his paste bin. And there is a little script that you're going to save into a folder called editor. So it's an actual editor script. I call mine CC window here. And that will create a little tools bar over here with a little button called Puppeteer. And that opens this little window. All you have to do is grab your actual VRM root, throw it into the source animator, and then grab the actual visual skeleton here, put it in the target animator, click generate constraint once. There will be no confirmation or anything because I don't actually know how to do that properly. You can close it again, and then if you click on your hip, you will see there is a rotation constraint here, and if you click on spine, there's one here. They're all already activated. If you click on tail, if your character has a tail, there won't be one because that's not a humanoid bone. The thighs have any. Everything is set up like it should be, and it basically just looks up the humanoid setup for both of your objects that we imported, and that's why we set this visual instance here to humanoid. Now, what you probably should do now is make sure that this part here has its own prefab, because we actually want to make sure that we don't lose the rotation constraint later. So I'm just gonna drag that in here, call it an original prefab, and now we have it like with our materials and everything. Now the good thing is here now, because we have like an actual prefab, if we update this, like the mesh on this, or the blend shapes, or even the bones or anything, this whole visual instance here, the prefab, will also be updated, and we don't have to re-export it as a VRM. So to show you this all works, we're just gonna select our whole root here and just gonna export this as an avatar bundle. Oh, wait, before we do that, I nearly forgot. The hip itself also needs a position constraint to the original hip because the script actually doesn't do that. Oop. Doesn't do that. So activate, just make sure you actually click activate. So when the hip actually changes its position, the whole thing also changes. Okay, that's all we need to do. Now select the root again, go and export an avatar bundle. I'm just gonna put that here. Yes, we can provide this. And once this is exported, we'll be back and show you how it works. Now, we are now in VC Face, and as you can see, the avatar is moving. There's no blinking or any head movement or any physics because I haven't set those up yet. But you can see the regular humanoid movement that you would expect is properly set up. So if you go into settings here and we just went down to like our arm angle, our arm's actually moving. Hooray! So yeah, it's basically set up like you would expect, even though we didn't actually turn the mesh itself into a VRM. So that's pretty cool. But why did we go through the whole process of binding one armature to another just to get basically the same movement, the same things? Well, let's go back to Blender. And let's say I don't like the look of this hat. I don't like how it looks. I actually wanted a completely different shape of the hat. And I'm just gonna like reshape it a little bit, make it a little bit more cooler. I thought this would like be much better. Maybe bring this like forward a bit. Okay, I changed the hat. I like how the new hat looks. Not really, but just just for the purposes of this demonstration, let's just say this is the new hat. Now I'm gonna select everything again and export it again to our FBX. Just gonna overwrite what I had in Unity. Now usually what you have to do when you actually realize that you want to change anything about the mesh, you have to go back into Unity, you have to re-export it as a VRM, you have to redo all your blend shapes, you have to redo everything you did through VSF Avatar. But if we now go back here, the hat just changed perfectly fine, and I can just directly export it again, override the old VSF Avatar that we just had. And oh my god, VC Face always takes a little bit to load, but we'll get there, we'll get there. And there we go. The hat changed. We didn't have to re-export anything through VRM. If we had set up any blend shapes, that would still be there. We can change UVs, we can change blend shapes, we can add blend shapes if we want to. We can change the entire FBX as long as we don't touch the humanoid bones. We can just update the FBX as we want. And that's not everything. If we go into here, and I can actually set this back to generic, that's perfectly fine. I can actually set the skin weights to be custom. And instead of having only 4 weights per bone, I can just set it to 255, apply that, and that will just work. We are not beholden to a maximum of 4 weights per vertex, because VRM would usually enforce that, even if you try to set the original FPX to this and then export it to VRM, it would automatically basically drop everything after 4 groups on every vertex. So you can have that. That's really good if you want like hair that's really flowy but still reacts to physics properly. Now, what you can also do, which is really cool, so let's say you want to animate a wave, like a hand wave, like a hello or whatever. Now, the issue that you usually face is if you try to animate an arm, you run into the issue that the arm is a humanoid bone, and VRM, or rather VSFAce, doesn't really want you to animate humanoid bones directly because it basically tracks them. So if you have like any kind of arm tracking, or even without the arm tracking, VSFAce is taking control of the arm, and if you try to animate it, it just won't let you. Now you can get around that technically by simply telling VSFAce, hey, I want to animate this, so turn off all IK. And VSFAce will allow you to animate the arm, but the issue then comes that you lose all tracking. So even though you only want to animate the arm, you lose head tracking, you lose the other arm, you lose leg tracking, whatever. And you basically have to animate the entire body, even though all you want is the arm to move a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go actually up here. We're going to create an animation. Just going to put that here. I'm going to call this wave. I'm going to save it. Now to animate the arm now, like we're animating directly from up here. To animate the arm now, I'm just going to click on this little thing. And, oh wait, did we actually lose? No, I didn't. For some reason this isn't, okay. It's just Unity being Unity. Right, okay. Oh, I understand now. Okay, never mind. So I'm gonna click this again. I'm gonna make sure this is actually locked so we don't lose it the moment we actually go down here. And then I'm gonna search for that arm. So I'm going down the spine, the chest. Now I want the right shoulder, and here's the arm. Now all I need to do is select those three, the upper arm, the lower arm, and the hand, because these are the ones I actually want to animate. And I'm going to turn off the rotation constraints. So now they don't actually follow the actual skeleton of the VRM anymore, and we can freely animate it. So I'm just going to go ahead, go in here, rotate this a bit, and then go in here. Actually, I want this to be like this. How do you animate an arm? I don't actually know. I'm not an animator. But if we just go in here, if you're an actual animator, I'm very sorry, but, and maybe we have it like this. And then we go like forward and have like that. And we go forward again. And bring this back. You can probably do a way better job than me right here, but this is just for demonstration. And then it could go like back here. Let's set this back to 0, 0, 0. 0, 0, 0. Oh god, I broke my arm. And 0, 0, 0. Okay, that's fine. So this will be our little animation. Now we can just put component here. We search for animation, VSF animations. Let's put that on joy for some reason. And throw the wave right on there. And that's it, that should work, hopefully. We'll see. Let's export that and then we'll see if it's gonna work. Okay, we are in VSFAce now, and if I try to use my animation, actually animates the arm. It looks a little bit weird because, you know, I didn't actually do a proper job of doing a good animation, but I'm not losing any tracking even though I animate the arm, and you can probably come up with like a really good way of do the animation yourself. You can actually import animations from a Blender as well, as long as you make sure that you don't have the rig set up for humanoid, but actual generic, because otherwise you're gonna lose the the ability to actually have an accurate animation. It will be really weird. Just keep it generic, that's fine. But yeah, so to summarize, Proxy Bones gives you full control over animations. It allows you to update your model without having to re-export to VRM. It allows you to have as many, well, up to 255 groups per vertex for bone groups. And it's just overall a really, really good way of setting up your avatar. The only hassle is setting up all the rotation constraints for all the bones in your humanoid. But I'll help you with that through this the script that Minions, Art, and I put together just for you. You can get it down in the description, and yeah, hope this helps you in your future endeavors. Hey, Future Past Feline here. I actually forgot something very important that you'll probably run into if you actually followed the tutorial step by step. If you remember, we actually broke the prefab instance from our VRM, so this will still be a cube. And if you try to set up the blend shapes, you will just have nothing, or the cube or whatever, which obviously makes it a little difficult to like set up all your blend shape clips. So all you have to do is basically take your go into your VRM folder and just throw your broken VRM on that, replace it anyway, then you have your VRM back, and then if you go back into your blend shapes, you'll actually be here and you can like set up your blinks or whatever and it will work. Okay, cool. Thanks. Bye.